Gentianopsis virgata, the lesser fringed gentian in the Gentianaceae, is another one of our beautiful fall flowering gentians. It is a native plant with a C of 10 and is found in prairie fens and moist calcium-rich sand prairies. It flowers from September 3rd through October 5th. And as you can see in this picture, it has 4 petals and the petal margins are fringed. You can see the fringes much better in this photograph that shows you the interior of the flower. Remember that the prairie gentian had 5 petals and the fringed gentian has 4. The arrow is pointing to the stigma. One of the things about the fringed gentian is the stigma opens up and becomes flat, which is an aid to pollination. The pollination in this group is extremely interesting. But first you should note that there are 4 sepals that you can see in the next photograph that you couldn't see in the earlier photographs. I'm going to read to you from the flora of the Chicago region because the full description of the pollination syndrome here is worth knowing. The flowers are protandrous, that is, the male parts mature before the female parts, and the anthers sequentially rotate in accordance to the flowering sequence. So you can see in this cut open piece of the flower bud that 3 of the 4 anthers have already rotated upward, and the 4th, which is in the back left, has not yet rotated and is still facing the pistil. I'll read on. Initially introrse, that is, facing inward, the dehisced anthers rotate upon their pale filaments and eventually become extrorse, that is, point outwards, at the end of the rotation. Another movement corresponds to 3 stages: introrse, bud phase; skyward, male phase; and extrorse, end of male phase throughout the female phase. In the skyward phase, a dehisced anther halts briefly and presents its pollen towards the corolla orifice, or a corolla visiting insect. In the extrorse phase, the pollen dusts the dorsal or ventral surface of a visiting insect as it gleans nectar from one of the 4 nectar chambers, which alternate with the filaments. So you can see here in this bud, which has not yet opened, the anthers are just moving into the male phase, which will be presented at the moment that the flower opens. All 4 anthers will be pointing skyward toward a visiting insect pollinator. Characteristic of the gentian family, this has opposite, simple leaves with an entire margin. The lesser fringed gentian, in this photograph you can see a stem and a bud. The sepals are covering the bud. The lesser fringed gentian has a relatively small range. We are in the middle of it, moves into Michigan and a little bit out west. There is another species of fringed gentian, the regular fringed gentian or greater fringed gentian, Gentianopsis crinita, which has more oval-shaped leaves. But this is Gentianopsis virgata, the lesser fringed gentian.